Well, yesterday was a big day at the Australian Open. A lot of the big names in the draw were in action, some at the same time, including Djokovic, Alcaraz, Kyrgios, Sinner, and Tsitsipas. Kyrgios and Tsitsipas going out early. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about what Kyrgios said about his future. We're going to look at Tsitsipas going down to Mickelson, which was a tough first-round draw and technically an upset, but more really just upsetting for fans of Tsitsipas, not rather than surprising. So we're going to talk about where he goes next with his game and his career. And we're going to look at the big results from day 2 at the Australian Open and break it all down, because that's what we do here on the Slice presented by Betway. So you're in the right place. Let's get into it without further ado. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This is The Slice. I'm Stephen Boughton, your host. Thank you for subscribing if you're new here. My question to you is, how is your sleep deprivation going? I'm already super tired, as you can probably tell just by looking at me. I stayed up till about 1:30 last night watching the tennis. I saw Felix win. Felix Auger-Aliassime, that is, friend of the show, win. I saw Sinner win. I saw Tsitsipas lose. And then I saw Djokovic, Alcaraz handling business. So, but the Djokovic Bazzavatarati match was very interesting. We'll break it all down. But yeah, like I said, it was crazy to see Murray in the box beside Djokovic. I tweeted out yesterday, I said, what world am I living in where Novak Djokovic has Andy Murray as a coach sitting courtside in a box where they're allowed to talk to each other? I said 2010 me would never believe this. So if this was 5 years ago, even last year, would you have believed that this would be a reality that we're experiencing? I don't know. Let me know in the comments section below. But yeah, very busy day of tennis yesterday. So let's get into it. Big story for me is Tsitsipas losing to Mickelson. Now, a lot of you might not think that that's really an upset at this point, but it still is. Tsitsipas, at one point was one of the hottest players to young players in the game, and that was because of his amazing ability on the court, his amazing serve, his amazing forehand, his amazing physical ability to move around the court and attack. But for whatever reason, it's just not as effective today as it was then. He even said in the post-match that he believes he's a better player now than he was back then. And that may be true, but to me, it doesn't look like it, obviously. And there's so many factors that go into performance. And a huge part of it is confidence and mental strength. And I do think those things are both worse than they were previously for him. And, memory, muscle memory, memory of winning and losing is a huge thing in tennis. So I think that is, like I said before, many times affected Tsitsipas in some of the ways that he chooses to play. So yeah, I'm still hopeful for him. The reason I keep talking about it is because I like watching him play. I think tennis is better when he's at his best, and he's not right now. But that is, to be fair, Mickelson is a great player, young guy who's coming up the rankings, and I believe he's like 42 in the world right now. He's going to be top 25, top 20 player, I believe, for sure, or higher. And he's got a game that really is a bad matchup for Tsitsipas, and we'll talk about why. So let's look at some of the stats. It wasn't 2 hours and 2 hours and 43 minutes. Both the first sets, I believe, were decided by one break, and they were tighter sets. And Tsitsipas was there. Again, he's not easy to break, but Mickelson did a great job on return. And then once those breaks happen against Tsitsipas, his weaknesses on the return, especially on the backhand, which is very evident now to most players, it really makes it feel ominous when he gets broken by a guy that's as comfortable at the baseline as Mickelson is, because it's hard for Tsitsipas to get it back, it seems. So just looking at the total match, 13 aces for Tsitsipas, 69% first serve win percentage, not as high as you'd like to see, but that's largely due to Mickelson's ability on the return. Going down to winners, 45 winners for Tsitsipas, 35 unforced errors, so not crazy. About the same ratio for Mickelson. But here's where it gets interesting. Rally analysis in the short points, so 0 to 4 shots, Tsitsipas had the advantage, which makes sense. But 5 to 8 shots, 37 to 24 from Mickelson. and 14-12 for 9+ shot rallies. So Mickelson, as the points went longer, Mickelson started to have an advantage. And the main reason for that is, if you watched, his ability to change direction, especially on his backhand, is great. It's as good as it is, really. It seems like he can do whatever he wants kind of with any shot. Like, it's his going down the line is super consistent, which is becoming more and more of a theme on the ATP Tour, but not a lot of players have mastered it to the level that he has. So you think about, so the reason why that is a big difference or a big problem for Tsitsipas is that Tsitsipas likes to go into the players to right-handers backhand and then run around his forehand to hit inside-out forehands whenever he can. But Mickelson's so good at disguising which way he's going to go and then cracking it down the line that Tsitsipas was not able to get into as many forehand aggressive attacking rallies as he wanted, and Mickelson was really hurting him going down the backhand, down the line backhand, and then getting into these backhand to backhand rallies where he was just better than Tsitsipas, and that's fair. So Tsitsipas's backhand has always been a bit of an issue, and that's not the main reason that he's struggling now. He's not able to impose his game with his serve and forehand on as many guys as he used to. And I think for the large part, that's because of confidence. You see him playing when there's kind of natural ways that you think he should construct a point. Sometimes he's hesitating a little bit. His forehand's still great. His serve is still great, but it seems like there's a bigger target on his backhand. He can hide it less well than, against Mickelson than he used to against a lot of players. Even Djokovic, he's beaten Djokovic, Federer, and Nadal. Like, he had beaten Djokovic a couple times and he just hasn't been able to for years now. And Djokovic is obviously a master at going down the line and tactically playing a match. So it just seems like the weaknesses are a little bit more exposed now, and his confidence and his swagger is not as high. Although he did win Madrid or Monte Carlo last year and have some good results, and he's done well at the Australian Open before. This is a big change, losing in the first round of the Australian Open when he's been in the final in 2023 and I believe semifinals last year, or at least quarters, and semifinals in 2022. Yeah, it's not good for Tsitsipas. So I think a main, fix to this is just confidence. He's got to get wins early at majors, and he's got to get rolls going. And it's hard to do that when you play a guy like Mickelson in the first round, who had already beat him on hard court at the end of last year, and had a great style matchup against him. Backhand down the line, physical player, big guy, can also bang his serve. And yeah, it actually got greasy there in the fourth set. Mickelson started to get pretty tight. They broke each other a few times, but Tsitsipas was just as tight and wasn't able to be confident behind his serve. So yeah, Tsitsipas out. If you're like me and you're a guy that's always kind of rooting for Tsitsipas, you hope to see him get on these runs. You hate to see him kind of go down early like this, but it is becoming kind of clear that he's not really one of the top players in the world anymore. He's, his ranking is probably indicative of where his level is at. But I think his ability and his potential is much higher than that. I think he's a top 5 player in the world, and but he's got to figure stuff out, and it's hard. It is really hard, and there's way more nuance in the game than a lot of people make it seem to be. Second story, Nick Kyrgios out to Jacob Fernley in, I believe, straight sets at the Australian Open. And yeah, Kyrgios said after the match, he said, realistically, I can't really see myself playing singles here again at the Australian Open. That is, he was he said he had a grade 1 abdominal strain before the match. During the match, you could hear him say, like, I don't even know why I'm effing playing. I'm serving, he said, this challenger player is serving harder than me. This is really fun. So yeah, he was clearly physically not at 100%. But that's kind of the reality of tennis, I think, at the pro level. You're not always 100%, but clearly for him to get his body back to top level to play at this level, it's not as easy as he, maybe thought it would be, or, coming back from injuries, he's just older now, and you got to play the game to have the body to be able to compete, I think. And he just hasn't done that. So training doesn't replicate it. Working out doesn't replicate it. So he's going to have to play a lot of matches if he wants to get to a level where he can compete, he thinks. But he said he will use his protected ranking for tournaments like Wimbledon, because he feels like if he's not injured, he could play well. But like to me, you've got to play lots of tennis to be able to hang in there. And yeah, so I don't know. Him competing with Sinner or someone like this at this stage is just like a pipe dream. It's not realistic at all. But he did, entertain the Australian crowd, and I respect him playing through that match yesterday when he was clearly injured. But to give the fans a show. But yeah, it's a little bit of a Andy Roddick said he's just a tennis influencer now. Is that true? You see him getting a large chunk of the headlines coming into a tournament like this, and then really just bowing out in straight sets in the first round to, like he said, a primarily challenger player, giving Fernley a huge win. So yeah, where does he go next? Is he going to retire this year? Is he going to keep playing? I don't really know. We'll see. Let me know your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section below. Let's now take a look at the rest of the big results from day 2 at the Australian Open. That includes Coco Gauff beating Sophia Kenin, Sinner beating Nicholas Jarry, which is interesting because they've both been in the headlines, obviously, in the last couple of years for drug positive tests. Jarry was out for 11 months. We're still waiting to see what's going to happen with Sinner, and he's been talking about it lots at the tournament. But Jarry's a great player. He's massive. Hit 13 aces. Sinner, though, was able to win 83% of his first serve. And yeah, winners to errors, double the winners to errors, 24 winners. Solid match from Sinner. Wins it in 3-2 tiebreakers, though. 2 hours and 40 minutes. Not an easy first round for him at all. So he's happy, I'm sure, to get through that in 3 sets. But yeah, good start to the tournament for Sinner. Djokovic also threw, but in 4 sets in 3 hours versus Bazavarati, the wild card from America, who played great. The similarities in their game are kind of shocking, and it's no doubt because Bazavarati said how much of a, has Djokovic on his WhatsApp profile picture. He's always been a huge fan, and he's clearly modeled his game after Djokovic. The backhand, is fairly similar, but the forehand is like almost a carbon copy. Bazavarati looks just like an Indian American, shorter version of Djokovic, and it's awesome. He's got spunk. He's pretty athletic for 9 or 5'11", I believe he is. And he put up a good fight. Djokovic hits 23 aces, which is crazy. Bazavarati, though, not a huge guy, won 72% of his first serves against Djokovic, which is very impressive. Djokovic played a pretty decent match, like 51 winners, 41 unforced errors. But Bazavarati made him work for it, and that's a impressive performance from the kid, and that's very cool to see. So yeah, Djokovic threw in 4 sets. Will that get the rust off? Will that get the wheels going? Will he bring a higher level? Because he did start slow and sluggish, obviously losing the first set. It's the first time he's lost the first set in the first round of the Australian Open ever, I believe, or since 2006, one or the other. But yeah, big match for Bazavarati, big match for Djokovic getting his tournament started. And then Naomi Osaka got the win as well in 3 sets over Caroline Garcia. On Margaret Court Arena, Australians did well. Tomljanovic wins, Thompson beats Kupfer, and Alcaraz beats Shevchenko. He kind of had a bit of after cruising through the first set, he had a bit of a mind break in the second set, took a bit of a hike, as we've seen him do before, and then was able to right the ship and kind of easily beat Shevchenko outside of the middle set there, where it seemed like Alcaraz just kind of got distracted or lost focus and was not himself and was kind of doing the damage to himself. Let's look at the winners. 38 winners for Alcaraz, 26 unforced errors. That's Alcaraz tennis, just big time. And in our first roundup, we will see who he plays next. But let's just get through a few more of these big results. Collins beats Singuer. Tsitsipas loses to Mickelson. That's right. Swiatek threw 6-3, 6-4. Jessica Pegula threw, as we already talked about, Kyrgios out to Fernley. Kokkinakis threw, so he keeps the Australian hopes alive from the Greek-Australian bad boys. Tommy Paul threw in 4 hours in 5 sets over O'Connell. So that's an Australian who does. Another Australian who loses. Tiafoe threw in 5 hours. Unfortunately, Dimitrov retiring. Hate to see it. Just the bad luck continues. Bencic and Kostyuk threw. Jack Draper threw in 5 hours, in 5 sets, 4 hours as well. Battle there against Mario Navone. Duckworth threw in 3 sets quickly over Dominic Stricker. Wow. So the Aussies did well yesterday for sure. Did very, very well. Tabilo out, 23 seed out, 28 seed Sebastian Baez out to Cazot. Not very surprising there. Neither is Tabilo. And who else do we got there? Davidovich Fokina over Jerry Shang, who had to retire, unfortunately. And he will play. Davidovich Fokina will play. Friend of the show, Canadian Felix Auger-Aliassime, who beat Jan-Lennard Struff. So if you're a Canadian who's watching, this was, I watched this whole match. I was intent on watching it, and being intent, Felix Auger-Aliassime looked more intense than he's always pretty intense out there. Sometimes it borders on looks like stiff, looks a bit anxious, but he looked confident but intense out there, and looked like he had a little bit of that bad boy attitude of I'm not messing around today. He flexed on him every time he won big points. He was flexing to his team big time. He looked very engaged, very intense, and played a good match. So how it went was essentially 6-3 for Felix. I believe it was 1 break in the first. Got that early and cruised. And then he won 6-1, 6-0 in the second set. Bagel. 2 breaks and looked great on his own serve. And then he was broken in the first game of the third set. And against Struff, that's tough because he wasn't able to break. Struff got a bit more confident. Felix's confidence and level dropped a little bit in that third set. And then he also got broken in the first game. He served both first times in the third and fourth sets, and he was broken immediately in the fourth. And I was like, oh boy, here we are. We're going 5. This is not good. And then Felix dug in, got the break back, broke again to go up, and served it out. So he won 6-1 in the fourth set. Pretty confident performance. Obviously, a guy, Jan-Lennard Struff, is much harder than it could be in the first round. So that's a confident win for Felix in the first round. The 3 sets he won were 6-3, 6-0, 6-1. So those are good, I would say, indicators for Felix's confidence and level going forward. So that is a look at day 2 at the Australian Open. We'll do a full round 1 review and look at the round 2 matchups after tomorrow's video, but wanted to touch base on Tsitsipas going out. Leave your thoughts below, and Kyrgios going out and where he's going to be at going forward, as well as talk as Bazavarati, Sinner, Alcaraz, all the big dogs on the men's side playing. But Medvedev, Shapovalov, Gabriel Diallo, friend of the show, Shapovalov, friend of the show, all the Canadians, those 2 guys are playing today, as well as Rebecca Marino on the women's side. So thanks for being here. Thanks for subscribing. That's the slice for day 2 at the Australian Open, and we will see you next time here on the show.